Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. Week 4 concludes with a doubleheader, baby. Monday night, the Jets go to Miami, and the Bengals up against the Broncos. So you know what I did? I said, let's throw together a little parlay. Now, according to the Hard Rock Bet Sports Hub, the Dolphins have won 9 in a row against the Jets. I think I'm going with that to change. I'm taking the Jets money line. I do like the Broncos, though, especially, that division's the AFC is a little more wide open as well. The Denver has won 8 in a row at home as a favorite. But I'm hammering the Broncos. So you got the Jets, you got the Broncos. That pays about plus 175. I said, you know what? Tyreek Hill, anytime touchdown. Garrett Wilson, looking good. Anytime touchdown. That pays about 16-1. Hard Rock Bet, no big deal. If you haven't tried your first bet yet on Hard Rock Bet, there's still time for you to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but an extra $150 in bonus bets. Download the Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app and make your first deposit today. What is happening, everybody? I was rooting for the Cowboys to win so I could wear my cowboy hat and tell everyone to subscribe to the YouTube channel, to the podcast. But somehow, the game ended in a tie, and we were talking before we hit play. I don't know. I don't even remember discussing, since I've been doing this podcast, definitely the video version as well, that many ties. I guess some ties have happened in some random games. I just don't remember a tie in one of the primetime games. That was, I don't even know what to say. We'll dive into it. 40-40. The Dallas Cowboys tie the Micah Parsons led. I mean, he was, like Collinsworth said, pretty neutralized most of the game, had a big play that probably potentially, saved him the game. Some other stuff I want to dive into, some injury news. There's something that just hit me today when I was sitting at my desk consuming football. I mean, that's ultimately what I'm doing, just consume all day Sunday, which is awesome, especially on a day like today. You get up, you already got a game going. I mean, I woke up, it was 14-3. And I do want to touch on the Steelers and how they relate to, today was a great day for them. Purdy, I got a stat for you. Do want to dive into him, some other quarterback stuff. And Colin and I today on the podcast after the afternoon games talked a little college football. There is one individual that I want to discuss when it comes to college football, because I think he's probably one of the more fascinating guys in the sport. So listen, before we dive in to any football time, I'm pretty excited right now. Today's been a fun couple hours of watching that game go back and forth, scoring points. If you like offense, now if you like defense, not so much. But before we dive into anything, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast. Here's what you need to know. Is your team in the playoffs? Do you want to go to one of these wild card games this week? See they're happening. And obviously the playoffs then officially start next week. We got you covered because Game Time. You can search by game. You can search by an individual team. You can search by area. Obviously football, college or pro, concerts, comedy shows, even events like I was just at the Ryder Cup. Any event you want to go to. When I was at the Ryder Cup, I was with a buddy that had gone to the U.S. Open for tennis. He was telling me about all the honeydews that he was slamming. I've never had a honeydew, but they sound fantastic. I would like to go to the U.S. Open. Not even a big tennis guy, but I will slam honeydews all day long and watch a couple dudes play tennis. Any event. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app. Create an account and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Now listen, it's been a rough 7-day stretch for the Packers, are the best team in the league. Your boy, if this was an AP poll, would have had them the number one team in the country after 2 weeks. And also, like, football is like a family. Like, it's a team game, right? You need help. People balance you out. Some days you carry more of the load. Other days, other people carry more of the load. Some days I cook and clean. Some days she cooks and cleans, like on football Sundays. Some days you do things. Some days she does things. Some days, especially those of you with kids, as they get older, they pitch in. Everyone does their part. A football team is no different. Sometimes your offense has to carry you. Sometimes your defense has to carry you. Sometimes a kicker has to make 5 or 6 kicks. Or a punter, your offense is off and has to pin the other team countless times throughout the game. You have a bunch of guys on offense and defense making millions of dollars. Your offensive and defensive coordinator, your head coach, they're all making millions of dollars. Like, everyone is paid to contribute. Now, we're dealing with humans here. And obviously some teams, in theory, the Packers are more talented than the Cowboys, have to come through more often. Look at the Packers. Last week, their offense was anemic. Now, the Browns' defense is good, but their offense was not good, did not make any plays, and honestly lost them the game. I mean, their defense played pretty good. The Browns had 3 points the overwhelming majority of the game. Packers had no business to not win that game. And then tonight, it's like the Packers defense, I don't know, through osmosis, just looking at the Cowboys, turned into the Cowboys defense. They were Jeff Hafley, and I even saw a headline sometime last week talking about coaching candidates, because we might dive into John Harbaugh. That thing could get weird. That if you are just like, is my coach not like, some of these teams that, Brian Daboll or something might get fired. I know he won today, but a guy like that, I'm just saying, a random team thinking about firing their coach. We've heard this with Mike Tomlin forever. Like, who would we replace him with? And you look around the landscape, like, who's the next Sean McVay? Who's the next, Mike Vrabel or Ben Johnson? Like, who are these guys available? You look around. Jeff Hafley's name was zooming up the list. And then you watch today, you're like, Brian Schottenheimer, kids say, belt to ass. Destroyed him. I get you had injuries. Every team in the league has them right now. Because the Packers defense was really, beside a couple plays, Micah Parsons at the end, was atrocious. I mean, Dak Prescott, you look like he was going to complete a pass on every time he dropped back. And listen, the offense came through. And Jordan Love was excellent. Except that last play of the game. And we got extremely lucky that this podcast, all the podcasts, and all the shows were opening up tonight and leading into tomorrow with Jordan Love's epic collapse in the last 15 seconds. And I'm not going to put it all on him, because LaFleur could still communicate with him because it wasn't under 15 seconds on the shot clock. Once it got close to 10 seconds to me and everything was off and he was still trying to, point people out and line them up, I think you got to get on the headset and scream at him to clock the ball. And yeah, ideally, you would like to kick a field goal with no time left. But in that situation, you couldn't risk what almost happened. Literally 1 second away. And I bet if we broke it down, it was probably closer to half a second than 1 second. If that ball's a little higher and flies over everybody, it's off. If the defensive player tips it or the ball bounces off him in the air instead of straight down, the game is over. And I'm not blaming Jordan Love in the sense of, like, his time management and his clock management. Like, there's a lot going on. He's a guy that doesn't have that much experience. Like, that's not Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson with 70, 80, or however many starts, right? Matt Stafford. He's still a relatively new quarterback, right, in terms of on-the-field experience. He had led him right down the field. Not that it should be that difficult because the Cowboys offense. I think that the coach has to help him out in that situation and just say clock the ball, because that was way too close for comfort. And honestly, the Packers probably should have lost in that moment. And if they lose in that moment, it's beyond devastating. Now, you could argue when you're a team like the Packers that trades 2 first-round picks, gives a guy $188 million to essentially be Myles Garrett or Max Crosby or TJ Watt or whoever, just to be a superstar for your team. Let's face it, be the face of your team. Your expectations are not to be 2-1-1 after 4 games. Especially when, listen, I thought they were the best bet of the weekend. This team, CeeDee Lamb, in sweats, that defense, the offense did their part. They were moving the ball with ease, scoring at will. Not sure what happened to the Packers defense. But that's also concerning. Big picture is this is the type of game, even if it is somewhat of an anomaly. I know they had some injuries on the defensive side of the ball, and their defensive line was pretty decimated. But let's just say that was an anomaly. Well, at the end of the year, like watching the Lions, and I understand they're playing the Browns, but the last couple weeks, it kind of looks like the Lions got their swag back. And that first weekend, you're like, okay, the Lions are going to be in trouble. And the Lions started playing more games. You're like, okay, they're going to be good. They're going to win 12, 13 games. Well, if you finish with one less win than them, and it's because of this tie, like that's kind of a problem. And listen, we feel like in November and December, the games mean more. But when you drop a stupid game, or in a situation like this, have a tie in a game like this, in a game where you're not a kind of a favorite, you were a touchdown plus favorite on the road against one of the worst defenses I've ever seen. Like, I'm not trying to be negative. I try to be positive on this podcast. I like football. I love football. But I also like good football. And I understand as the world's changed, not even the world's changed, but the concussion lawsuits a decade plus ago, the league had to dramatically change. And Kyle Brandt was on this podcast a couple weeks ago, and he ranted like, I support protecting the quarterbacks because when they get hurt, it sucks. And I've always agreed with that. I do as well. But there is a level of like, in college, nothing grinds my gears than a questionable targeting penalty and the kid getting thrown out of the game. Not just thrown out of that game, but then he has to miss a half of the next game. News for everybody, most of those kids in college are not going to be playing in the pros. They only get so many years to start in major college football. It's the peak of their athletic career, and a pretty awesome peak. I fucking despise that rule. You know why? Because in 2025, this isn't the 70s or 80s or the 90s. No one's trying to hurt anybody. Those days are long gone. These guys all get coached to be safe. Sometimes, yeah, they hit him with a helmet. Okay, throw the flag. Kick him out of the game. That really irks me. But tonight, it looked like everyone coached to like just, instead of taking one step closer to the offensive player, let him get an angle on you, then see if you can tackle him. And my expectations for the Packers defense are low, just like everybody. They're atrocious. And trading Micah Parsons, while the process, the way they got there, I don't love. Because if you are going to trade him, no issue. Your team's not remotely close to competing for a Super Bowl, despite having a pretty good offense. Looks like your head coach, pretty good play caller. You should have traded him around the draft. Not only would you have gotten more, but you could have drafted players to help replace him, right? You could have immediately used, like you always want money now over money in 2 years. Anyone in the NFL will tell you future draft picks are worth less than draft picks right now. Why? It's like time value money. And I just think you watch the Cowboys defense, it's a tough watch. It really is. It's why people think I'm a hater with the Bears. I'm not. I actually thought Caleb made some impressive plays today. Also had some bad ones, but I hope Caleb's awesome. You know why? I watch football for a living. You know what I want? More good teams, more good players, more good quarterbacks. You know who I don't like watching? Backup quarterbacks, shitty quarterbacks. I enjoy watching Dak Prescott. Honestly, I've always been a supporter of Dak Prescott. Now, I also think you have to put him in perspective. Like, don't compare him to Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. But relative to most of these quarterbacks, he's fucking better than them. And if you're going to play defense like that as the Green Bay Packers, like, you got no shot to win the Super Bowl. And I think, Brian Schottenheimer, one thing we got to give him credit for is last week against the Bears, who also are pretty bad on defense. I mean, really bad, pretty eye-opening. Somehow Geno Smith kept throwing the ball. That's a whole nother conversation. But, it's hard when you lose a player early in a game who is one of your key players. We saw it with Xavier Worthy week 1 on the 3rd play of the game. And Andy Reid was like, he was a major part of our game plan. And you have to adapt, and there's no replacing specific players. And with the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb's a stud. So the game plan, especially against a team like the Bears that doesn't have any corners, it's hard to, you're kind of screwed. But when you have all week this is a mark of any good coach. When they know the guy's out, they can build a game plan with what they have. And Brian Schottenheimer came into this game. Hell, I mean, they were down at what looked like was going to be like 14-0. I mean, I got done doing the podcast with Colin and I turned on the game, and the Packers had just drove down the field to score their second touchdown. They blocked the field goal, the PAT, scored the 2-pointer. The Cowboys kind of got some momentum and they just started rolling. And Dak and the play calls, and it never stopped throughout the whole game. And even Collinsworth or Tirico mentioned it. He's like, Brian Schottenheimer, Dak Prescott, they have called and played a hell of a game. And his numbers mirror that of LaFleur and Jordan Love. They were like basically the exact same up until a couple plays left. I think probably right when the Packers were at the 50-yard line, give or take, on that final drive where they ended up kicking a field goal to end on the tie. But like two things tonight would be a little concerning is, Halfley, because part of being a great defensive coordinator is if you do have some injuries, you start playing with backups, it's pretty difficult. It really is. Like I thought Aaron Glenn has proved himself over the course of a couple of years. Like he was an excellent defensive coordinator. But you get to a point where you get enough injuries where you're rolling out me and you at linebacker and at D tackle and at safety. It is hard to stop people. And then your offense just has to be lights out. So like the Cowboys know they have to play like that. I don't think the Packers go into these games thinking they're going to have to play like that. And luckily, Jordan Love and LaFleur, kind of picked up the slack. Which would have sucked if, for him and that unit specifically, if they would have blown the game, which again, they came 1 second away from having. They wanted this Micah Parsons story to be, I don't even know. This isn't basketball. Like when Kevin Durant returned to Oklahoma City and they had the cupcakes and they were all calling them pussies. Like that wasn't going to be the case here because the Cowboy fans really liked Micah Parsons and didn't want the team to trade him. Like in basketball, it's happened. LeBron, Cleveland, those guys, one, were with their programs a lot longer and they left in free agency. This guy didn't really choose to leave. It was just a chaotic situation. But then Parsons, he fell on his back, like didn't really play a huge part of this game. Despite, I was like, who's playing tackle for the Cowboys here? So it's kind of a bizarre watching experience beside these two historic brands just lighting up the field and like feels like no one, obviously they're trying on defense, but relative to a lot of the day, like the tackling couldn't have been much worse. The DB play was horrendous. I mean, some of these plays, the wide receivers are Pickens, Dobbs, who had a really good, is like catching the ball in front of the corner and then like making one move and then getting by him. There were a couple plays tonight, like Jacobs would just give a little juke and he'd be gone. It's like, guys, so do we practice tackling? And the answer really is no, because it doesn't really happen in the league. And that's where I want to get into next. But yeah, 40-40, the Green Bay Packers. You saw the look on Dak's face, a huge smile. Like, Dak's no dummy. He's been in the league long enough. He knows his team is, like, wasn't supposed to win this. Most people would have thought, he said, what's the score tonight when the ball kicked off of this game? I bet the average football fan would be like 35-13 would be a blowout. So he had a huge smile on his face. Like, it was pretty respectable. And I can imagine that Packers plane flying back to Green Bay will be pretty quiet. I would guess they're pretty embarrassed. And there's a little pressure now. Like, there's not pressure on Brian Schottenheimer. We leave this game, like, really impressed with the guy. I actually think he's had a really impressive season. Everyone thought that he was going to be just this village idiot, being this guy that was one and done, being a joke. Like, he clearly is not a joke. He's a good offensive coach. The team is playing hard. Their defensive personnel sucks, and you know where I stand. Again, might have been a little aggressive last week with Eberflus, but he would not be in the top 20 defensive coaches if we did a draft from scratch that I would draft as my defensive coordinator. Hell, I start texting around. I'd hire some like linebackers or DB coaches around the league. So I'm impressed with Brian Schottenheimer, and I do think that LaFleur, like, there's just a lot of pressure on this team. And at the end of the day, like, his job, he's the head coach. He's not just the offensive coordinator. He's clearly a good offensive coordinator. His quarterback was slinging that thing around. Of course, it's the Cowboys. You should. But, like, you got to win the game. And I just think the special teams with the Packers the special teams around the league right now, I don't quite understand how all these kicks are getting blocked. But the Packers just, how many times, Rich Bisaccia, who everyone with the Raiders loved, and I was told over and over, like greatest coach of all time. Like, is he a good special teams coach? Like, are most of these guys good special teams coach? Or are they just pulling an all-time scam? Because most of these coaches, especially the offensive guys, don't know dick about that side of the ball. I mean, don't not only don't know, they do not care. Honestly, they despise it. They judge it. They hate it. If they could, they would take it out of the sport. McVay, their special teams have been bad. Shanahan's special teams have been like historically poor over the years. The Packers special teams now for a long, long time have not been good because, and people ask me all the time, like some of these defensive guys, I think they value it more because it has more of a defensive feel. Coverage units, tackling in space, angles to tackle, angles to corral the ball carrier. I think these offensive coaches view it as like I don't even know. Childish is probably the wrong way to describe it, but just dumb. I mean, they just don't like it. And at the end of the day, like they're paid a lot of money to run the entire team. And I somewhat agree. I'm not the biggest like special teams homer here, but you got to put some emphasis, even if it just means you standing there during practice and being a presence, being seen, so the guys know that you value it, even if you don't know anything about it. Like no one would blame you, but to be around, I just don't think that happens a lot. I think you'd be really shocked that during these periods of practice, these guys go over to the quarterback, go to the offensive guys. They're just talking what they love, what they view as their baby, and I think it shows. But I do think the injuries. I looked up today in the morning games. I had like two TVs on, and I have a screen right in front of me, so I can, if I really want to get aggressive, there were 7 games on this morning. I don't even know if I had that on the Texans and the Titans game. So I had on like a 4 screen, then I had like a 3 screen or a 2 screen with Red Zone. I had the Ryder Cup going, so I had a lot going on. And I'm mainly watching in the morning Dart and the Chargers and the Eagles and Tampa. So I'm really focused on one and keeping an eye on everything else that's going on. But there was at one moment when I looked up and there was a cart out for multiple teams. And multiple other games had guys lying on the ground. And obviously, the turf monster that is MetLife is a disaster. And I feel like, and I don't have the data to back this up, but injuries in the NFL have never been worse. Like in 2025 specifically. Every single game I watch, hell the night, guys go down by the series. Sometimes star players, sometimes just random rotational guys, sometimes just like a random guard, sometimes the most famous guy on the field. But, I mean, the 49ers that obviously lead the league had again today a dude in the tent and a waiting line outside of the tent. They might be the worst, but they are not alone. The Chargers today had a devastating day. They lost Joe Alt to a high ankle sprain, and their offensive line was in shambles. And I get asked a lot, what do you think the theory is why all these injuries are happening? My theory is 2 things. One, there's like a concrete moment. There's a specific time and place where everything changed. When I got into real football, I mean, I was at Cal Poly, but it's Cal Poly, like no shade to guys that have played there. It's much closer to high school football than it is Bama, Georgia, and Penn State, Oregon. When I went to Fresno State, it was like, I mean, we were playing Wisconsin. We were playing Illinois. We were playing, UCLA actually was good back then, like real teams, and Boise State. Like it was real football. I'm pretty sure maybe there was one day off. We had 3 straight weeks of double days. And a lot of those were full on tackling to the ground, and Fresno's hot. It's like 110 degrees some days. It's not quite as hot as where I live in Arizona, but it's for California, beside like the Mojave Desert, probably one of the hottest areas in the state. And it was run like an NFL practice. You know why? Pat Hill came from Belichick. That's where he learned to coach with Kirk Ferentz. He was the assistant offensive line coach. Kirk Ferentz was the offensive line coach. And they went against Belichick and Nick Saban every day. Training camp, OTAs, the regular season. and they wore pads and double days forever, just like all these teams. And then I went to Andy Reid in 2010, and I remember in Lehigh, where the camp was, double day after double day after double day, and it was just so intense. And I thought, these guys are such badasses. This is so hard. Like, it's not the Junction Boys. Like, you get water breaks and stuff, but it was extremely physical. And it was like that all around football. College, hell, high school. I remember Davis High School in 2001, 2002. Like, weeks of double days every single day. No off days. And then 2011 happened. Little thing called the lockout. And the league fought for more money. It's what they wanted. But one thing the players were adamant to do, which I understood, I guess, at the time, was like, no more double days. We want to have a practice and then like a walkthrough. So double days were essentially canceled. And the other thing that went along with that was you couldn't have, I think, like more than 4 straight days of practice. You would have to give the players a day off. Pretty sure that did not exist before. So not only did you have double days, you go as many weeks as you wanted. Now, starting in 2011, no more double days. And you couldn't practice after the 4th day. The players had to get a day off. And then there were also rules during the season about how often you could wear pads. So basically, the NFL owners and the team side said, we'll get to keep more money, and you get that. And they said yes. And in theory, it's like a lot of like government decisions. You know, when academia, well, this on the whiteboard, it sounds great. And it probably did sound great and make sense at the time. It is not great because they don't play football anymore. Part of training for football, this isn't basketball, where you can play pickup games year-round. If LeBron wants to get 9 other All-Stars or 9 other NBA players, they could play legit games in the summer, right? It's the same thing. Same thing in baseball. Like you can run simulated batting practice. Like you can do a lot of things just in a batting cage. In football, you're either playing actual football or you're not. Training camp, even when you do have the pads on, you don't tackle to the ground, let alone touch the quarterback. So it's not even what you do in the game. Now you can thud, but you're still not going the same exact speed because you're not going to tackle the guy to the ground. So you're not simulating what you're going to do in the game. And the one thing we know now with health and wellness and all these, how much money these guys put in their body, these guys have never trained more, which I admire and I respect. But I also think that some of these guys became so in shape and almost so fast that all they do is train and play games. And then during training camp and obviously during the season, you play a little like 50% football, but there's like, there's no build up to the games. There's just training, which these guys do at a really high level throughout the year, and then playing the games. Now, these guys aren't as big as they once were, safeties and linebackers, but they've never been faster. So you see all these guys constantly pulling ACLs, just getting injured because of the speed of the collisions. They're not used to that because they don't have it in practice anymore. So basically, the NFLPA fought for less money, but more time off, which has led to more injuries, which I would imagine is going to lead to shorter careers for guys that, who knows, will never know the answer. If they just would have trained like they had been training before, would have been more physically fit. Now, maybe you could argue that the wear and tear, like the older guys, the guy that's 65 years old that played in the NFL for 10 years in the 80s, so your body feels it, the wear and tear of all those practices and the games over time, but they definitely were more equipped to play in the games. Now, the other thing is, the turf is a huge argument, and I do think, like MetLife, the turf is really bad. And people have argued that some of the turf that they have used at these fields is not even the best turf that they can buy, which I'm no turf expert, though I need to put some into my backyard. I can't imagine owning an NFL team, especially if I'm the Morris or Woody Johnson, the 2 assets that are worth probably a combined, you can tell me whatever Forbes wants to tell you. Either one of those assets, and I was just in New York City, I think, the Giants probably sell for $15 billion and the Jets would sell for 10 plus. So you're talking 2 things worth $25 billion and don't even have good turf. How's that possible? How's, because I don't know if like some of these domes, could they handle the grass? I'm not an agronomist here. Know a few superintendents at golf courses. That's about it. But clearly, the turf situation is dramatically worse than grass. And what we have seen at MetLife has had dramatic impacts on humans' career. And if you're the Giants and you don't have the best turf, well, you just have one of the more talented young players that you've had in a long, long time. And it looks like we'll find out. I'm recording this on Sunday night. You'll probably know by lunchtime on Monday if Malik Neighbors blew out his knee. And Joe Alt, who's one of the better young players, any position in the NFL, is he more likely to get a high ankle sprain on that shitty turf than he is on the grass? And I could be wrong. I'm not a doctor or trainer. But the injury situation, here's what I know. As just a fan of football, it's just not sustainable to lose all these guys, game after game after game after game throughout the league. There aren't enough players on the street to replace them. I used to work in this business. I used to have the sheets of if someone was injured, who would we bring up? It feels like half the league's already used those lists. We're not even to October. I don't have an answer there's no button to fix, but I think it all stems back to 2011, which is never going to change. But I think what the players fought for is actually counterproductive into what they want, and that's to be able to, stay healthy and have longer careers. So yeah, just sucks. That's all I know. It just sucks. No one wants to watch, obviously, the quarterbacks, but just all the other random players just get constantly carted off, hurt, and just feel like their season ends or they have to go on injury reserve for 4 games or 8 games. It's just brutal. I mean, it feels like it's never been worse. And I feel extremely confident, and I have no data in front of me. I'm very confident this is as bad as it's ever been. Here's what I know as bad as it's ever been. The Ravens suck right now. I mean, they blow. They can't stop a high school team. Now, we talked about it last week. Their 2 best defensive linemen are missing. Their 2 best pass rushers are missing. Metabuke is a stud. I mean, he's a badass. He's got a bad neck. That's pretty concerning. They put him on IR, so he's gone for a while. Van Oy, right, banged up. Roquan Smith got banged up. Their defense is getting shredded. The Chiefs, whose offense has struggled, to put it mildly, for a year and a half, lit them up like a Christmas tree. Worked them. Game was at Kansas City, place where they don't lose much, but Kansas City's got to be feeling pretty good. Chargers have a million injuries. Raiders got Geno Smith. We'll see the Broncos tomorrow. They've got a long way to go after becoming the offseason Super Bowl champs. I'm guilty too. I hyped them up. Chiefs going to be okay. They got Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if you ever heard of them. But the Steelers, who I was like, I don't know, man. Aaron Rodgers, 42. The defense looks like crap. This is not going to work. I wake up today, and they are just leaning on Minnesota. When I got up, and DK had just scored the long touchdown, and I felt like it got worse from there. Gainwell's looking like Rashard Mendenhall. The defense is flying around, sacking Carson Wentz, just making plays. And then I would imagine those guys, I saw Cam Hayward on Instagram post a picture of him and TJ slamming a Guinness. Can't even imagine how good it tastes over there. I mean, because I had about 50 in New York in a 36-hour period, and they taste great in just the Irish pubs. So they've always said they taste way better over there. So then they look up, you go, well, the Browns got to be one of the worst teams in the league. I mean, just a mess of an NFL football team. And the one thing they got going for them is their defense. When your offense sucks that bad, your defense is going to get worse over the year. They're going to get tired, and it's just human nature. You're going to give up because you have no hope. The Bengals, who did not play today, that play tomorrow, don't have Joe Burrow for 3 months. I don't know about you. I'm out. And then the Ravens are 1-3. And there are no defensive reinforcements coming. And while their offense is going to have games where they score 40-plus points, it's not going to happen every game. And if you're going to have turnover problems, which they have had, you're screwed. And I do think we have to ask 2 questions. Is their Super Bowl window closed? I do feel pretty confident that their best chance to win a Super Bowl, beside when they beat the 49ers in the Super Bowl over the last 20-plus years, was 2 years ago. They had the best defense in the league. They had the MVP at quarterback. They had the game at Baltimore in the AFC Championship game. They were favored for a reason. They had the best defensive coordinator that year on their side. They were healthy and they were fucking loaded. And they got curb stomped. And Lamar shit the bed. And now a couple years later, their defense is hurt. They've, that coordinator's gone. And it gets to one of those things that you're just gonna John Harbaugh just on scholarship forever. Does he get after the last couple years that have been good? Does he get a 6-11 season? Does he get an anomaly year? Ravens fans have had it better than Steelers fans because you guys have won playoff games, but you're like, oh, it's Lamar. Now I think John has proven a lot, but things get weird. And that's the best part of football. When you start losing, things get weird. That's why it's entertaining. Because, what is going on right now? And these last 2 weeks, you played two real teams. And you just played, a team that you've played a lot, that you know really well. A team that was 1-2 as well. And you should have had a lot to play for, and they kicked your ass. And obviously, last week, the Lions destroyed them. So I think the Ravens, I would never just say I'm totally out on them because you got Lamar Jackson, but clearly got a lot of issues. So massive day for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'm pretty sure the Bills might have been, the Ravens might have been number 2 of biggest odds to win their division. I mean, I'd be a little stunned at this point in time. I guess you never know if Rodgers were to get hurt, the Steelers would change dramatically. But Pittsburgh's in pretty good shape. Someone who's not in good shape right now is the 49ers' health situation in general. And Purdy. A huge part of your job when you are the franchise quarterback is to be relied upon. And to me, that is you got to be healthy. Google how many games Patrick Mahomes has missed in his career. How many games Josh Allen has missed in his career. Dak Prescott has shattered a leg, ripped a hammy, but for the most part, unless it's been a season ender, Dak Prescott plays in a lot of games. Right? Jared Goff's pretty durable. Jalen Hurts, I mean, how many games he missed over the last 5 years? I just need my guy to show up. You're gonna have bad games. It's the NFL. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Rodgers, Joe Montana. People have bad games. Tiger Woods shot 75 every once in a while. But for the last 19 games, Purdy has 20 interceptions. And to me, Brock, like Baker Mayfield, they try to pull things out of their ass. But the one thing Baker has done a pretty good job of over the last couple of years is throwing a lot of touchdown passes. Purdy, I don't think ideally they wanted to play him today. But the problem is, if you play for the 49ers, you get injured. It's hard to avoid. So Mac Jones, who was banged up at the end of last week and all week long, it's Purdy's probably a little healthier than Mac Jones, so throw him out there, and Mac Jones will be 80% backup because that's at what he is at best. So the 49ers were in a weird situation from a health standpoint, which is not ideal because they got to play the Rams here in 4 days. And then today, it's if Purdy was a pitcher, if this is the playoffs, right? If a pitcher's off, you take him out because the games are so important. Every at-bat, every run matters. You could tell early on. Balls are flying on Brock. All over the map. Overthrows McCaffrey, leads to a pick. Had a couple plays that Demarcus Robinson and Juwan Jennings made incredible high point catches that if they were an inch shorter, it would have hit the safety behind him in the breadbasket. I thought he was atrocious today because he couldn't control his ball placement. And he is a great play from a backup tight end away from that being a pick week 1. And I just think he's gotten pretty reckless with the ball. And I've had people, and it's hard for short guys to see, right? There was a play today. I'm trying to think who it was from. It was Carson Wentz. That you just realized they had a back shot of him looking at the Steelers defense. And you realize he's 6'5". The advantage, and I've said this forever about the era of the quarterbacks that I grew up on through high school and then through college, in the late 90s, throughout the 2000s. All those guys are enormous. the Eli's, the Rivers, the Carson Palmers, the Peytons, the Tom Brady's. I mean, the Roethlisbergers. These guys. If you ever seen Cam Newton in person, he looks like LeBron James. These guys aren't struggling to see over their center, guard, or tackle. And some of these quarterbacks that are shorter in the league, it's hard for them sometimes. Just basic math. If I'm 6'1" or 6'2" and the guy ahead of me is 6'4", or if I'm 6 feet and the guy ahead of me is 6'3", like especially when you factor in helmets, I might not have the great line eyesight where I'm throwing it. And a lot of it's based on anticipation and timing. Well, if I don't see that well and it's based on anticipation and timing and my accuracy is a little bit off, who knows what's going to happen? Kind of like keep your fingers crossed, right? And the only time that almost comes through is like grenades and horseshoes, right? Where you can be close and it still gets you points. It's not how it works playing quarterback. The precision of throws on just basic routes, let alone over the middle routes, are extremely high. And I think balls are just flying all over for the guy. And today, like I know he's got multiple injuries, which to me is already a concern. But man, I mean, that was a rough watch. It really is. Then you got Sala and Liam Cohen barking. Sala said something about Liam Cohen sign stealing, and I couldn't even follow. I was traveling this week. I'm like, it's too into the weeds for me. And then Liam Cohen's like says, keep my name out of your mouth. And Robert Saleh said, I'll fucking kill you. Like literally, like I'll murder you. Which, in San Francisco, Robert Saleh would probably be back at work the next day. I'd take Robert Saleh in that situation if they did get into a heated conversation. One of the Jags offensive linemen's looking at Saleh like, what are we doing right now? But it's just kind of embarrassing. I mean, it really is. Just the whole thing to get him to lose to the Jags, throw a bunch of picks. Listen, Trevor Lawrence is not that good. He's just not. I'm sorry. Two quick things on the Jags. I just don't think Trevor Lawrence is that good, and I like Travis Hunter. I'm rooting for Travis Hunter, the dude. Just enjoyed watching him play going back for a couple years in college, but you can't trade up multiple ones to take that player over a pass rusher. I mean, the Giants should feel very fortunate that Abdul Carter fell on their lap and a team made that pick. Because it's just the wrong. It was insane at the time, and watching it play out, it's just not a good move. I mean, he's not playing both ways. You know why? It's impossible to play both ways. This isn't basketball where it's like you play offense and you play defense, you play back offense, get back on defense. That's how football works. Defense comes off the field, offense goes on the field. No one plays both ways. Last time I checked, some of the greatest athletes in the history of the world have played football at wide receiver and a DB. They don't go both. They don't just like, yeah, I played 90 snaps. Not how it works. And it's not how it's going to work on this here either. Couple other quick things like Stafford was really good today. It's crazy how good Puka Nacua is. I mean, today I'm watching him play. I'm like, this guy, how physical he is. He turns in. You know how Debo used to be with the ball in his hands? Now, he couldn't really run routes, so you had to like pitch him the ball or hand him off the ball. But then once Debo had like a head of steam, he could run you over. He could break like 3 tackles. He turned into a monster with a full head of speed. Puka does that, stopped catching the ball, and then he'll turn around and like run through you. And obviously, when he catches the ball in motion, the power and like his body and balance control and strength when the ball's in his hands, he's just a freaking monster. He is, and I said this, I told Colin this. I do think Debo did this to the Niners in his heyday. I think Puka's doing this with the Rams. Is when you have a good physical defense and then you have physical guys on offense in your skill positions, it creates like an extra level of physicality. And you watch the Rams, like they are a really physical team. And it's not because they are, I mean, Karen Williams is a good player. I like Blake Corum as well. But I think Puka's physical nature makes their entire offense feel physical. And obviously Stafford is a tough physical guy. But I mean, he is just, maybe I don't know, didn't give him his proper respect in my mind because I'm watching him play just this season. I'm going, that guy. When's the last time we've seen a guy like this? You put him with Devontae Adams. They're They're a problem. That was a big win for them. I also think the Colts are good. I mean, I think Daniel Jones. eh, I think Daniel Jones is pretty good. I mean, they're a questionable holding call away from winning that game. I want to end on this. Last week, I think I guess I watched it the night that it came out. Is I watched the Lane Kiffin documentary and documentary. I mean, it was like an hour long, and I followed his career really closely. I mean, going back when he played at Fresno State, his best friend on the team, Scott Thompson, is very close to my family. I've had family in Fresno for 40 plus years. They used to be over at their house. Like I've known Lane's name well before I was probably in college. And then when I worked at Fresno State, Tim Skipper, who is now the interim coach for UCLA, was a star linebacker on those teams with Lane. He's very close with them. So when Lane got the USC job, me and Tim used to go down. He had hired John Baxter from our staff, who ran Lane's academics and special teams with USC. Like I followed Lane's career extremely closely. And the one thing with Lane is, he's always been a pretty big wild card. And it shows you on the documentary, not only was he very arrogant and brash, but like I think drinking and, he's got a little like Bill Clinton in his prime to him, that most ADs over the last 3 or 4 years, even as he's won a lot of games, would not touch him. I feel pretty confident saying that several years ago when Oregon was open and Mario went to the University of Miami, Lane desperately wanted that job. Why wouldn't he? He knows he could dominate there. They wouldn't even talk to him. That was the year they hired Dan Lanning. How's that going? But that AD, who's an excellent AD, I mean, hired guys like, Chip Kelly to Mario Cristobal to now Dan Lanning, they weren't going to mess with him. The only schools that are really interested in Lane over the course of his success, and he's been having a lot of success as a head coach post Alabama, was Auburn. So Ole Miss and Auburn, let's face it, kind of second rate SEC programs. Alabama had an opening. He was their offensive coordinator when they won national championships. I mean, really two, but one, he got fired right before they played in it. And clearly they weren't interested. They hired a guy who'd never coached in the South. So Lane Kiffin, here's why I give him a lot of credit, because I think we all, at a certain point in time in our life have to go, yeah, this isn't the best thing I'm doing in life. I need to make a change. I need to look myself in the mirror and go, this isn't going to work. And clearly, you just look at him physically. He's lost a ton of weight. And you watch that documentary, he does hot yoga at like 110 degrees every morning, 7 days a week. He says non negotiable. But obviously, anyone that likes to have a few cocktails and a few pops knows that you remove that, you remove some of the excess eating that goes along with it, it can change your life. And I think you watch this and you watch him coach and you watch, he's very secure in himself, and he doesn't come off as arrogant and brash as he once did, because he doesn't have to anymore. And I think a huge part of that documentary was trying to show these athletic directors that, like, I'm not that guy that you had red flagged over the years. I'm a changed man. My family's a huge part of my life. In that documentary, his daughter, obviously, I don't think she lives with him now because she's in college, but moved back. His son, obviously, his brother's there. Even his wife, it doesn't really make it clear if they're back together. Layla, who's just a smoke show, that like I'm not running around and being an idiot. But what I am doing is I've gone 49 and 18 since I've been at Ole Miss. And in the SEC, I'm 28 and 16. And I've beaten the likes of Kirby and Brian Kelly 3 years in a row. I am dominating. I just beat LSU with a quarterback from Ferris State. Now, he was the player of the year last year in Division II, but he went from Ferris State to Ole Miss and beating LSU. And currently you'd go, well, if they get to 10-2, they're going to be in the playoffs. And you took Ole Miss. Like, it's one thing if Brian Kelly won a national championship at LSU or Kirby Smart won a couple championships with Georgia. Like, yeah, no shit. That's what you're supposed to do. Even Ryan Day, like, obviously last year was really impressive for Ryan Day and Ohio State getting hot in the playoffs. But it's like, Ohio State, they win national championships. Kind of what they do, right? I mean, it's kind of the standard. If someone gets the Florida job and in 5 years they're in the finals, like, yeah, it's Florida. They should be doing this. right? If Mario Cristobal gets Miami to the Final Four, like, yeah, that's what we pay you to do, right? Or Dan Lanning wins a bunch of games at Oregon, like, yeah, no shit. You should not be doing this at Ole Miss, even in an NIL transfer portal era. So I think what Lane Kiffin transforming his life, which I respect a lot. You should always, as you age and you know, children as they grow and families grow and you get perspective, you lose a parent. I think that shit changes you. Like I've lost a dad. It has dramatic impact on you. And I think there are probably people in the business like, oh, Lane's just full of shit. I mean, I know people that know him that or not know him well, but knew him in previous worlds, like 10, 20, 30 years ago. I don't know if I buy it. I kind of do. But here's what I do buy. He's a dominant coach. And right now, especially when you factor into school, he's as good of a coach as there is in college football. The way we hold Dan Lanning or Ryan Day or Kirby Smart or Kalen DeBoer, we'll see Mario. I would put Lane right there in the upper echelon of college coaching. And I know this stuff doesn't randomly get made. This is like a bat signal because like it is about as good as it gets at Ole Miss. His daughter's going to graduate in a year or two, and she was a big reason that he stayed. But like there are going to be a job like Florida or whatever. I mean, whatever the job. But you have to be pretty offended if you're laying like you hired Kalen DeBoer over talking to me. Like you didn't even you wouldn't interview me. You wanted Sark. And it's not like Sark's choir boy. He was once fired for, I don't know, being intoxicated at a team meeting. But he changed his life and we all respect it. And he's doing a great job at Texas. But like he got the Texas job. Texas wouldn't have talked to Lane. They talked to Sark because Sark had a better reputation, even for his faults. Like he just did. And I think Lane had a pretty bad one. And is really it feels like kind of John Baxter, his former special teams coach, used to have a go-to saying that when you find yourself in a hole, what's the easiest way to get out? Got to drop the shovel. And it feels like Lane has, and what he did. I mean, I thought that win against LSU was extremely impressive, and I find Lane a fascinating individual, and I'm pretty just it's been really really impressive to watch. Adios, night night.